Hey everyone, so welcome to this new little series I'll be making where I take a look at computer hardware that I've acquired recently so you can get an idea of what I'll be covering on my channel. I probably won't release these too often as I rarely get a hold of a lot of hardware at once, but I thought it would be some nice filler content while I'm working on larger videos. Anyway, without any further ado, let's get into it. First up, we have this card, and it's a Radeon XT5970, and it has a pretty long story behind it. I purchased this thing for pretty cheap on eBay, and it was in pretty terrible condition when I got it. I'll put a few images on screen so you can see. It was really dusty, and this shroud was held on with what looked like bathroom sealant. Speaking of which, this shroud is not the original one that would have come on this card. It's actually from an HT3870X2, and I have no clue why the original owner put it on here. Not only that, they also soldered some of the pins on the 8-pin PEG connector together with a wire coming off of it, so no clue what was going on there. Anyway, I cleaned up the card, applied some fresh thermal paste, and also removed all of that extra solder on the 8-pin. Actually, you can see my awful soldering job there. Anyway, this card amazingly still works and has pretty much no issues aside from the shroud, of course. The original shroud would have covered the entire card and also allows some air to pass through the VRM heatsink. So the VRMs run a little hot on this card, but it's nothing too bad. So yeah, essentially this thing is two HT5870s on a single card, and it performs really well when both GPUs are being utilized, of course. Sometime I want to test it out against some other cards like my HT7950, GTX 770, and GTX 580. I think it would make a great video. Next card up is the HD4870X2, and unfortunately this one is dead. It artifacts. It's a shame because I would have loved to see how this thing holds up, but it's just not happening until I get a working one. I may try to bake it or something, but I don't have a sacrificial oven right now, and I'm not sure it's even going to work. Anyway, I actually really love the look of this card. It has a similar cooler to the HD3870X2, but it's blacked out instead. Also has this awesome Radeon decal on the front of the card that the HD3870X2 doesn't have. It's an awesome card, but I just wish it worked. Next up is the Radeon X1900XT. Now this card does work, sort of, but I think it's starting to have some issues with artifacting. Anyhow, this thing is the normal version of the X1900XTX I took a look at recently. The main differences with it are the core and memory clocks. They're slightly lower on this model. Voltage is the same as to be expected. It has the same stock cooler as my X1900XTX had, and it's just kind of loud and not that effective. The graphic on it is pretty cool though. Overall, yeah, I'm really glad to have another R580 card, although this one probably won't get its own video, seeing as it's basically the same as the XTX but with some lower clocks. Next card is one that I've actually owned for a long time and have only recently taken out of storage, and it's a GeForce 7800 GTX by EVGA. This one is the ACS3 variant, which actually has a pretty big factory overclock and this beautiful looking cooler. Honestly, I think this card was ahead of its time with the full cover shroud and also a backplate, which is cooling some of the memory modules. Also, this shroud is made of aluminum and is connected to the main heatsink with some thermal pads. Anyway, I'd love to take a look at this card sometime in a comparison against my X1900XTX and XT, but I still want to get my hands on an overclocked 7950 GT and maybe an X1800XT before that though. Next up is this card, and it's an HIS Radeon HD3650 with AGP, and yeah, it's actually one of the last AGP cards ever made. It's definitely not the last one, as I'm pretty sure that title goes to the HD4670, but it's still a pretty rare and hard to find card. I was lucky enough to get this thing for pretty cheap online, and it's in great condition too. Unfortunately, it has this really shrimpy heatsink, so I'm not too sure how hot it's going to run, but yeah, I'm really excited to see how it holds up, but I think I need to upgrade my AGP test system because it's currently running a 3 GHz Pentium 4, and I think it's going to bottleneck the heck out of this card. I'd love to get my hands on an LGA 775 board that supports Core 2 Duos and AGP, but man, they are just so rare and expensive. Next up is another card I've taken out of storage, and this one holds a really special place in my heart as it's the original Radeon 9200 that came out of my family's Sony Vaio. It was basically just a Radeon 9000 Pro with AGP 8X support, and it performed pretty well for the time and was cheap too. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any DirectX 9 support, but it still runs a lot of games from the era like Half-Life 2 and does it pretty well. Anyway though, I'm really glad to have it back because I have a lot of fond childhood memories with this thing. So the last bit of tech I got this month was actually an upgrade to my personal rig. So you guys might have seen the community post I made recently where I cleaned out a friend's dirty PC. I actually had a Gigabyte Aorus B450 board and R7 1700 lying around, so I asked him if he wanted to swap the parts since he was using some heavily threaded applications, and I thought it'd be a pretty good upgrade for him. Not to mention the board has a much better upgrade path over Z270. I did the swap and he let me keep his old board in 7700K, and since I was rocking a 3770K in my main system, I decided to upgrade it with that. I noticed the 7700K was running fairly hot on my Noctua NHD14, so I de-lidded it with some thermal grizzly conductonaut and also overclocked it up to 4.9 GHz. It's been pretty great so far and a very substantial upgrade over my 3770K, especially in single-threaded performance. Anyhow, that'll be it for this quick little video, and I have more of my normal content on the way soon, so stay tuned. Also, I'll be making a community post showcasing the next card I'll be taking a look at. Thank you all for watching, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.